Is that good? Everything's good? I guess that don't matter. All right, thank you, Matthew. I refer to him as a deeper version of John Denver. I've told him that once or twice. So anyway, does a really good job. We appreciate it. I got a call from Ozzy Friday night. I was on the way to a football game and didn't know if he would be able to make it tonight because he was with the Kathy Peach family. And didn't know about getting back in time and rushing back, and I just said, yeah, I'll cover it. So got some things put together that we're going to talk about. Mike mentions this a lot. You know, Sunday evening is not just where you just have to listen to me. I'm going to, helps me learning from your comments. So if you can comment as we go through some things, that will really help me out. So I'm kind of excited about this. There's two different phrases come about recently that's helped me kind of put this together. And we're basically going to be in Matthew chapter 5 on the Sermon on the Mount there here in just a few minutes. But I don't know, I got it put together. I was a little bit excited about it. I told my wife, I said, are you going to go to the ladies' room or stay in there and listen to me? She said, oh, I'm going to the ladies' room. I'm used to that, so that's okay. But it's not a problem. And anyway, Matthew chapter 5, verse 38 through 48, Jesus talks about some ways of what people should be about, but a lot of times people are not about, me including. I like to think that I've gotten better, but these are not easy. These are not easy, and I'm going to bring up some points that I would like to talk to you about, but if you've heard my lessons before, I like to read through the text, and then I like to turn around and break it down. And I'm going to start in verse 38. I'm in the New American Standard. It says, if you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I say to you, do not resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. If anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, let him have your coat also. Whoever forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks of you, and do not turn away from him who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends the rain on the righteousness and the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? If you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Therefore, you are to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. So, looking at these verses, there's a mindset there that Jesus is talking about for us to fall into and live. And it is not popular. Not in today's society. I don't think it's ever been popular to fall into this mindset. I've heard, and here's the two statements I've heard recently. One of them we've heard a lot. We've heard Mike in his lessons talking about loving the unlovable. And that is sometimes a difficult thing to do. But I'd never heard that phrase till I heard him mention it once. And I got to thinking about that. And then also last week, he had mentioned in here, of all of Jesus' amazing miracles, one of the most amazing things he did was live his life sinless. And that's quite a feat. That's quite a feat. That means when he encounters situations like 38 through 48, he batted 1,000. Okay? He was perfect, right, in that. If he threw 35 passes, he completed 35 passes, trying to get it out different ways for us to understand. He hit the bullseye every time. And these are not popular. Sometimes I don't know if they're taught the way that they should be taught. Sometimes everybody always says kids have changed, but have kids changed or have parents changed? And that's something to think about as well. Well, I'm trying to broaden my horizon a little bit, right? I'm trying to broaden a little bit, but no, that's a good point. I was afraid of, I'm pretty sure basketball will surface at some point, but in this lesson it usually does. But yeah, you know, he was sinless in these situations. So I'm going to read some words, and you think about people doing this to you. Think about people doing this to you. Here's the words: slap. I already see some of you turning red. Somebody slaps you. Sue. In my situation, I'd just counter sue because I wouldn't have a choice. No, that's a joke. Slap, sue, take. Okay? Take from you. What about force? You know, we don't like to really be told what to do. What if somebody forces you to do something? Ask. Okay, I could live with that one. Borrow. I could live with that one depending on how close we are to payday. Persecute. Okay, these are words that are mentioned here that I have underlined. We're not going to be a fan if somebody slaps us. Okay? If somebody sues you, if somebody takes from you, if somebody forces you, if somebody asks, maybe, if somebody borrows, maybe, if somebody persecutes, you're not going to be a fan of that. These are the things that Jesus talked about. These are the action words that are being done to us, and He's telling us how to handle it. Now, are the ways we handle it matching what Jesus says? So looking at here, as we go through this, you've heard that it was said, an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evil person. Whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. And we told our kids, when you get on that playground and little Johnny hits you, what did we tell him to do? You know, and, you know, I'm trying to compare this to, you know, this has turned to him the other also. Somebody explain that to me. Okay, Buck slaps me. Okay. You didn't get this side. Somebody, like, does our way of teaching things that are going on, does this match the way that Jesus wants us to do things? Question mark. Not necessarily, does it? Ideally, you get a world where everybody gets along and there's not any slapping. Ideally. Because if everybody's taking care of everybody, then everybody's taken care of. Unfortunately, we don't live in that world. I think we will one day. I think we will one day, right? If somebody's to sue you and take your shirt, let him take it and do what? Give him your coat. Who are we in this mindset? I didn't want to get to this too quick, but I'm going to have to. I didn't want to get to this little excerpt right here that I wrote down. We can see this stuff that we're seeing. We can read it. We can even teach it. We can expect it. But are we doing it? You know, I've been coaching hurdles for about 20 years. I was a young coach and had to get involved in the track program when I worked in Maybank, and I was told by my boss to help out with the hurdles. And when you worked for that gentleman, when he told you to do something, you did it. Okay? So I went learning. And I went around, hung around people who knew how to hurdle. And right now, I can teach you how to hurdle. I can teach you. But I can't do it. I mean, you know, I can't. I've never ran a hurdle race in my life. But I can teach you how. I can teach you about the lead leg, the trail leg, three-step, all that stuff that means nothing to you. I can do that. I've just been around it for a long time. So my point is, we can see things really in the Bible, not just in Matthew and in the Sermon on the Mount. We can see it. We can read it. We can teach it. We can expect it. But are we doing it? Because knowing it is really just part of the battle, right? If you know it. Like, we have to act it out. And these are some specific type examples, but I think this whole thing is a mindset. And here I go with working hard. You know, when you finish games sometimes, occasionally somebody will tell you, you know, the team played hard or this or that, and sometimes their version of playing hard and my version don't really match up. Okay? But playing hard every day is a mindset. Like, you have to bring it every day. You have to bring it. You can't just walk in the gym, all right, what are we doing today? Where's he at? So he started yelling at you. You know, I mean, it's a mindset. You got to bring it if you're going to be good. Or somebody's getting ready to knock you down. Like, I don't mean physical. I mean, you know what I'm trying to say. So, do we have this mentality every day? I mean, okay, then how do we get it? How do we get it? Somebody slaps me, I turn away from him. Somebody wants to take my shirt, you give them your coat also. You know, why is it this way, and why is the world so different? Yeah. 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 No. Yeah, you know, and you don't know why they're doing what they're doing. And sometimes we're on the wrong end of it. And then we feel like things are not fair. And I tell you, like I tell the kids, the fair's in October. That's about the only fair I know of. That's about the only one. And that's the truth. If you're looking around for things to be fair, you're in the wrong planet. The fair's in October. They just finished it not too long ago. And that's just the way that life is. And, you know, and not necessarily this is loving the unlovable, but if somebody treats me like this, I'm not, you know, I have to still be here to love. Jesus loved everybody. Did Jesus encounter stuff like this? Oh, gosh. Oh, goodness. How did he handle it? How did he react? He's ready to forgive them. You know, he's ready to forgive them. This is a mindset that you have to meditate on this. You have to think about this. It just doesn't show up, in my opinion. I don't mean to be saying opinions from the pulpit or whatever this thing is, you know. But it's a mind frame. If someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him too. We don't like to be forced to do anything. You're not going to tell me what to do. I'm 49 years old. You ain't telling me what to do, you know. You know, it just seems like we always should have the mentality of a lending hand. We should always have that mentality. I think sometimes we as people or humans or good old boys or Christians can get a bad rap because we know this. We know it. We can read and we can teach it. But we can't do it. You know, we don't necessarily do it sometimes. You know, and then you get labeled a hypocrite, and probably rightfully so. You know, hypocrite, somebody says one thing and does another. Isn't that right? Well, that, you know, so we have to have a mind frame, you know, and it's tough. But, you know, if Jamie wrote these words, you might could combat it. Jamie didn't write these words. Jesus wrote it. Combat that now. Huh? You know, I mean, Jesus, this is the mind frame. This is how he wants us to carry ourselves. This is what he is talking about. You know, you get some people around them that maybe whether they're acquaintances or people or not, and they're hard to love, and we're supposed to love everybody, including our enemies. And I've had some enemies. You're in my line of work, you're going to get enemies sometimes. You know how it is. You win games, kids play great, you lose, it's coach's fault. I mean, that's, Mike, you know. I mean, that's the way it is sometimes. Give me just a second. And you know, I've had people say some ugly things about me before. Text, Facebook, you know, from the crowd. Not a whole lot right here in front of me, but, you know, and I ain't gonna lie to you. At that particular moment, they didn't like me very well, and I didn't like them very much either. Well, you know, but as I've gotten older, I've caught myself praying for people. You know, I've caught myself praying. So I'm just kind of sharing some personal experience here. Ken, did you have something?
I
Well, the officials, we're going to come back at midnight and I'll talk to you all about that one, okay? Anybody got any suggestions so far? Give me suggestions. How do you turn the other cheek? How do you give them your coat also? 1 mile, how do you give them 2? What are some, we're talking about it. How do we do that? You're Christians. How are you doing that? You're kind of going the kindness route. You're taking the kindness route, right? They used to say kill them with kindness or whatever. I think that's a good answer. God bless you, and I hope things get better, What else? I know y'all are in these situations. You have to be. You're bound to be. How do you handle it? The right way, not the wrong way. I can tell you I handle it the wrong way. I've done that plenty of times. Sounds like a good song title. That's great. This world is not my home, just passing through. Yeah? Who else said something?
I'm just thinking that it's really not hard to live what you're saying we should be living on Sundays.
Yeah.
So maybe we ought to see if we could live like that every day.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Does it take work? Yeah, what's so wrong with that? The world don't really want to work today. What's so wrong with that? What's so wrong with getting up every morning and going to work? I mean, I believe you'll survive. Sometimes you have to do things. It just seems like it's harder for you than it is Jim Bob. Well, so what? So what? When I was in algebra, the kid sitting next to me could get it the first time, and the girl sitting behind me could get it the 6th time. And I couldn't help it. It took me the 40th time, but I finally would get it, And it ain't fair. But you know what? Once you get it, you just move on. Life's not fair to you, sometimes. Yes, sir.
This section, some people have called this Sermon on the Mount, like Jesus in Matthew is compared to Moses. In fact, it shows him how he's more superior to Moses. Like Moses went up Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
Jesus goes up here on the mountain to give what's kind of the equivalent, you might say, of the Ten Commandments. This is the law for people who live under King Jesus.
Yeah.
And what makes this even more incredible, that part you said, when he says, somebody asked you to go a mile, go with him too.
Yeah.
What he's probably talking about is, this makes this more incredible. Rome was an occupying country. It would be like if some foreign power, let's say Russia or China, had occupied the United States, and there were Roman soldiers walking around everywhere. They came up to me and said, you have to carry my packs, my stuff for a mile. By Roman law, the Jews had
to do it.
And instead of, how patriotic we are, instead of, no way am I going to do that, he says, go more than that, go to.
Yeah.
I think the only way you can do that, I'm not saying I'm good at it, right?
No, I understand.
I think the only way you can do it is the reason we always think that we have to stand up for our rights and not let people trot upon us, which is basically what he's saying. You should let it. Because we don't have enough faith to think that God will take care of it.
Yeah. It's almost like we're putting a lot of effort into earthly, right? Does that make sense? Like, not knowing that later on God's going to take care of you on not necessarily the other side as in heaven, but just the back end of it, which might mean a week later. The Good Samaritan, I think when he got him to the end, he paid for it, and then it says, take care of him and I'll pay more if it needs to be. Am I quoting that some kind of correctly? I will take care of it, And have you been in situations to where, I don't know, you might have been in situations where money gets tight and then something happens all of a sudden. I don't know. I can't explain it sometimes. It's weird. Everything just seems to work out a lot of times. I've been in situations to where I have lived month to month, but it just seems like everything works out and then I move on and probably not thankful for it as I should be. You just move on and don't even think about it until it happens again. But I've been in that situation. So, Yeah, I think all of this is a mindset, of trying to be this way. I think first and foremost, to get to this way, you can't be against it. I mean, we're tough guys sometimes, and I know there's people out there taking advantage of you. I'm at the group that went to Bayou La Battery. We've given out food. I'm sure some of those people are taking advantage. I don't know if that's necessarily for us to decide that part. But it's an interesting, it's just, this whole text is just interesting because it's completely opposite from what I see in this world today. It's completely opposite. And maybe it was this way in 1750. I don't know. I wasn't around back then. But it just seems like a lot of times when you go through the Bible into times, it just seems like man has done the same old things over and over. People talk about, well, it's worse now than it's ever been. And then I go read about Sodom and Gomorrah, and I'm like, are you sure about that? So anyway, just food for thought right there. Continues on, and verse 43, you've heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I do think I have gotten better at that, that Jesus talking to us. And that's a question I had written down. At this, can we get better at this kind of stuff? Yeah, I think we can. I think we can get better at this. You have to meditate on it. You have to pray upon it. And you can be better at it, I think, tomorrow than you are today. You have to want to get better. First, you're not going to get better unless you want to. You got to have the want to. And it can't just be lip service. Like I said, we can see it in this book and we can read it. And I can tell Buck how you're supposed to handle it. But do I do it? Do I do it? So I think we have to look in the mirror. Seems like James talked about that a little bit. And, if your children or grandchildren see you doing these things as Jesus wants us to do, or this mind frame, is that going to have an impact on them? Of course it is. Of course it is. Children or grandchildren, or they're at a vulnerable age where they're learning a lot of things. And if we act this, how can we make the world better at this? I would say one person at a time. I would say starting with your family. I would say starting with you or me. I would say that's how you and then you could look at, well, there's 8 billion people in the world or whatever. Well, I mean, that's not the right mentality, I don't think. Looking at things, that's not, I don't think you can always weigh the numbers to think that you can't accomplish something. I know there's 8 people got on the ark, made it out of there okay. So I've never put a lot of weight into, well, there's very few of us and not very many of them. I mean, because see, those 8, God was with them. And that makes the difference. That makes everything totally different, when God's on your side. And so moving forward, persecution. Pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he causes the sun rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteousness and the unrighteousness. So as we're good people, sometimes bad things happen to us. And you look around and see a person that's not following things so well, it seems like sometimes good things happen to him. But I know through the eyes of God, through the eyes of Jesus, He wants everybody to be saved. So are we looking at these people sometimes through the eyes of Jesus, or are we looking at them through our eyes? People that are doing you like this. I know people have done us all wrong. I know it's frustrating. I know we've been done wrong over and over, but I think we need to stick with Scriptures and try to do our best to help somebody. I understand it's hard to help somebody that doesn't want to be helped. I understand that too, but I just think the world, with Matthew chapter 5 and 38 on, just does not really, for the most part, line up with this. I don't think it's taught real well. I don't think this mindset that we're talking about is cool. I think this means if you do this stuff, I think it means you're not tough. I think it means you're a sissy. That's what the world thinks. Or you're stupid. Or you're dumb, or all these things that you come up with. But we're not answering to the world. We're answering to God and we're listening to the words of somebody that hung on the cross after being beaten, you want to talk about fair, after a perfect life, and said, forgive them. You know, we can so quickly forget exactly what he did and exactly what kind of mind frame did he was willing to do, thy will be done, the will of God who is above us. So, moving on. Before I get to this next point, I want to make this comment. We said, how much impact will it have if they on the younger ones, children or grandchildren, any age, if they see in us doing this? And I think we agree that it will have a huge impact. But there's another side to that. If we're not doing this, how much is an impact is it going to make? It's going to make a big one. It's going to make a big one. You know, sometimes we're just going to get, I guess, trampled on, sometimes. Paul ever get trampled on? You know, I think it's going to happen. And maybe it's not one of those if, it's when, maybe. You know, it's pretty rough world out there, you know. You're going to get made fun of and things of that nature, you know. Yes, Scott?
You know, you're talking about Jesus and, you know, the last few days before crucifixion, he actually was slapped. They asked him to guess who it was. They took his cloak.
Yeah.
He had to walk and carry his cross.
Just about all this type of stuff right here.
All of these things.
Yeah.
When you get down to the verse where it says, pray for those who persecute you and forgive them. He did this. This is what he's talking about.
Yeah. And this may come out a little harsh. I don't know. Maybe the coach comes out in me. You know, I ask kids sometimes, you love basketball? Who loves basketball? Everybody raises their hand. Okay, I never see you in the gym. Okay, you're ready when you're out the door when practice is over. You're never here early. If there's a pickup game, I see you walking out those doors and you're going to tell me you love basketball. You know, because actions are right. Actions are where it's at. The wise man, you know, he acted upon it, right? And, boy, this, I'm going to say this, but it ain't coming from me. That makes no sense, does it? So somebody says, do you love Jesus? I love Jesus. Do you? You know what I mean? And I don't mean that like I'm trying to cast stones, so don't take that the wrong way, because I'm even saying that to myself. Okay, Jamie, that makes it better, because I call out my own name. All right, the way you're carrying yourself, do you love Jesus? You know, is it shown by your actions? Okay? Should have called my name out a lot sooner. That would have sounded a lot better. But just like we tell kids, you know, do you? You know, do you do these things, or do you love, or anyway, continuing on. Verse 46, for if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? So, let's tie 47 with it. If you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Okay? So I'm probably going to get an amen from Mike on this one. Mike, if you're looking for the verse to cover the 2-minute drill, this is it. The 2-minute drill he's talking about, where when service is over, where we get up and go greet other people. And I'm trying to get better, because he stepped on my toes when he said that. You know, and so I'm trying to get better at that, to go find somebody. You know, it's basically saying right here, if you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? You know, what have you done? That's a good thing, but what have you done? You know, we've got people in here to see after the lessons and after sermons, or after every service that we're here, are we greeting the visitors and trying to make them feel a part? You know, and that came through my mind as Mike has been bringing that up recently. Kind of a 2-minute drill, we kind of gave it a little neat name, to where we get up and around. Are we doing those things? And Mike's not calling us out. The Bible's calling us out. The Bible's the one that's calling us out. Jesus is the one that's calling us out. So are we doing those things? And you know, I don't necessarily think it's something that we want to dwell about. Let's just get better at it. Right? Let's just get better at it. Okay, let's get better from this point forward. All of us, me, getting better. If you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Tax collectors do that. This whole mind frame, excuse me, I'm going to turn into a coach again. This whole section, this little part I've talked about the last 3 minutes, reminds me of the freshman that walks into basketball practice with a bunch of juniors and seniors and sophomores who have been to playoff games, who've won district championships, have scored 20 points in a game, have endured a 30-game season, have been all district, and then you have a freshman walk in and, he's kind of walking around high and mighty like he's done something. And on occasion, I've told a couple of them, not many because it's kind of harsh, but look, you ain't done anything. You just settle down. You know what I mean? So that kind of mind frame kind of puts me, if we're just greeting, only those that we love, I kind of feel like God's looking at me and saying, you ain't done anything there. Get out and go. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? That's what it feels like to me. I feel like that freshman who feels like I've maybe done something. In essence, you ain't done anything. If that makes sense. So anyway, tax collectors do the same. If you greet your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same. Therefore, you are to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. I love that verse. You are to be perfect. Is that going to happen? No, but you are to be. So you're striving for that. You know it's not attainable. Too bad. Do it anyway. I'm just reading it and I'm just saying it and I'm just a country boy and that's all I know to tell you. That's what the Bible says, so do it. We're striving for perfection. It means we have to think and meditate and pray and study, and we have to see it, we have to read it, we have to teach it. We have to expect it from ourselves, but we have to do it. Okay? We can turn a lot of people off. I've seen this happen in my life. People very, very knowledgeable in the Bible, but turn people off because they're expecting them to do it. But they ain't expecting them to do it. Or them doesn't follow it. Okay? They don't follow it very well, but you expect somebody else to do it. Then you get labeled a hypocrite, then you start having issues in the church, and you can see why. Because you're not showing what kind of Christians we are by how we love one another. That's how we let them know, by how we love one another. Seems like another good song title, doesn't it? Or a song. Okay? Show them we're Christians by how we are. I found a few quotes. Some of y'all knew this was coming. I always go find a few quotes. I liked it because I think it makes us think. And we have been around people that are sometimes just straight up ugly that have done this stuff to us, perhaps. And then we've been around some that, heck, families maybe have done this to you. People that you really love. And it puts me back on the love and the unlovable. It's something that takes some work. You have to practice at it. You have to get better at it. Jesus did it, so we have to do it, period. One quote I found says, love unlovable people because we have all been unlovable at times. People usually need love the most in the moments when they deserved it the least. That kind of stepped on my toes when I read that. I never thought about that. I wonder if I've ever been unlovable to people. Probably so. I'm sure I have been at some point. I'm glad my wife went to that other class now. I'm sure I have been. There's no doubt. I probably have been, so we have to look at ourselves sometimes. People usually need love the most in moments when they deserve it the least. When they're beat down sometimes, are you going to step on them or are you going to help them? That's just kind of, I thought that was a neat quote. I read another one that says, love means to love that which is unlovable, or it is no virtue at all. I thought that was interesting. It's almost like I'm taking the love out of love if I'm not doing it to everybody or to the unlovable one. It's saying that it's really no virtue at all. I don't want to be the one guilty of that. I thought it was neat. God teaches us to love by putting some unlovely people around us. Ooh. Ooh. Ouch. Well, we always say, well, God has His hand in everything. You know, well, God works in mysterious ways. How many people have said that? You know, God teaches us to love by putting some unlovely people around us. Maybe that's why. Doesn't matter if it is or isn't. What does matter, it matters, but the point I'm trying to make, Jesus' words, the Son of God, here's how He told us to act. When you're being done wrong, like I said, it's not hard to act in here, as Mike you mentioned. It's not hard to act in here. It's a little bit more difficult out there. And at the same time, it's not hard to act around people that love you, but the ones that don't love you. It's a little bit more of a challenge. Okay? To love means loving the unlovable. To forgive means pardoning the unpardonable. Faith means believing the unbelievable. Hope means hoping when everything seems hopeless. I don't know. Just food for thought. I just think they're interesting. Interesting thoughts. And I had one more. It says, let God love the unlovable ones through us. So if God works through mysterious ways, maybe He's using you, to maybe help reach those people. Love is always full-time, never part-time, never sometimes, and certainly not just on your time. And I'm guilty of that. Sometimes somebody needs help, but I just happen to be busy at the moment. Conveniently had something else going. I'll read it one more time. Love is always full-time. It's never part-time. It's never sometimes, and certainly not just on your time. Like I said, take it for what it's worth. Just a few quotes I thought were interesting. Like I said, I put this together starting Friday night. It's not one that I'm going to take us all the way to 7 o'clock, but it's just been on my mind. Two things spurred it: the love and the unlovable, and Jesus going sinless, even though, as Scott just talked about, Mike mentioned that's what amazing feat through His years, no sin, acting perfect, even when He was done wrong. And that's what brought this on. And then the more I started reading this, I started thinking about the world today, and hopefully we can help change it. Hopefully we can help change it. And anyway, does anybody have anything they would like to add or anything?
What was that last quote where you said love is full-time, not part-time?
Yeah, let me pull it up right here. I found it somewhere on the internet where, as Mike said, everything is true, but this one sounded pretty good. Love is always full-time, never part-time, never sometimes, and certainly not just on your time. So I can give it to you here in a minute if I need to. Yes?
Test all of these things that he's putting out here. Go into business where you have to deal with the public.
Yeah.
They'll test you in every one of them.
Yeah, you can get plenty of practice, can't you?
I have that practice.
You can get plenty of practice. That's true, And if we're doing these things, then we're being the light, right? We're being the light in a pretty dark world. We can be the light. We can be the light in a pretty dark world if we're living the way that Jesus wants us to be.
One time, Mike, you said this. You said, like for the fruit of the Spirit, like every day, you're not going to get everything right. You may do it one day with one, and then the next day you're not good with that one you were just good at. It's the same way. Every day you just work on a little bit each time.
Yeah, trying to improve upon it, trying to get better, striving for perfection. I think we get that out of the last verse. Trying to be perfect. We're not going to be, but we're going to try to be and be okay with that mind frame because we're counted that way, correct? We're counted that way in the eyes of the Lord. If we're Christians, we're counted that way. So let's do our very best to be that way. I think that's it. Thank y'all so much. I hope it worked out. I know it's helped me going back through here, reminded me of a lot of things. These will come in helpful for me because tomorrow morning I start basketball season number 25. So this was, if you didn't know it, I've been preaching to myself the whole time. So Anyway, I'm going to give it back to Matthew, and thank y'all so much. Thank you.
There's a fountain.